4,000 years ago, in the bustling city of Ur, a copper merchant named Ea Nasir received what might be history's oldest recorded customer complaint. But this wasn't just any complaint, it was etched in clay, fired for permanence, and apparently important enough that Ea Nasir kept it, along with several others, all complaining about him. For decades, historians have debated who Ea Nasir really was and where his copper actually came from. Now, ancient Na is revealing an answer more complex than anyone imagined: the genetic. Evidence doesn't just tell us about trade routes, it reveals the actual people behind these transactions, their origins, and the vast networks that connected civilizations across thousands of miles. The most famous tablet, dating to approximately 1750 BC, comes from a customer named Nani, and he is not happy. The tablet reads, in translation, "When you came, you said to me as follows: I will give Gimmelsin quality copper ingots. You left then, but you did not do what you promised me. You put ingots which were not good before my messenger and said, if you want to take them, take them. If you do not want to take them, go away." Nani continues, "What do you take me for, that you treat somebody like me with such contempt? I have sent as messengers gentlemen like ourselves to collect the bag with my money, deposited with you, but you have treated me with contempt by sending them back to me empty-handed several times." For generations, this seemed like a simple story of commercial fraud. But recent genetic studies have revealed something fascinating. Some of the people buried in Mesopotamia during this period carried DNA markers found today only in the Indian subcontinent, Tibet, and the Himalayas. These weren't Mesopotamian locals. They were merchants, traders, and intermediaries from thousands of miles away. Ea Nasir lived in Ur during the Old Babylonian period, around 1800–1750 BCE. Archaeological evidence from his house, discovered in excavations conducted between 1922 and 1934 by Leonard Woolley, reveals he wasn't a small-time operator. His residence was substantial, located in a commercial district of Ur. The house contained what appears to have been a business archive, multiple complaint tablets, business correspondence, and records of copper transactions. The sheer volume of tablets found in his home suggests Ea Nasir was a significant merchant dealing in international copper trade. But here's where ancient DNA changes everything we thought we knew. In 2013, scientists extracted mitochondrial DNA from teeth of 4 individuals buried at Tel Ashara and Tel Masaic in the Middle Euphrates Valley, dating from 2650 BC to 200 C, a period overlapping with Ea Nasir's lifetime. What they found was shocking. These individuals carried empty DNA, haplogroups M65A, M49, and M61, genetic markers that originated in the Indian subcontinent during the Upper Paleolithic. These markers are completely absent in modern Syrian populations, but present in Tibet, the Himalayas, India, and Pakistan. These weren't random migrants. The genetic evidence suggests they were merchants traveling the ancient trade routes that connected Mesopotamia to South Asia. To understand why these complaints matter, we need to understand what Ea Nasir was actually doing and who he was doing it with. Mesopotamia had virtually no copper deposits of its own. Copper had to be imported from places like Dilmun, modern Bahrain, Magan, modern Oman, or even further afield from Anatolia, Cyprus, and potentially the Indus Valley. Civilization. This made copper merchants like Ea Nasir critical intermediaries in a complex international trade network. But here's what makes the DNA evidence so powerful. We now know this wasn't just theoretical trade. We have genetic proof that people from the Indian subcontinent were physically present in Mesopotamia during the Bronze Age. A 2014 study, expanding on earlier research, concluded that individuals carrying M65A, M49, and M61 haplogroups in ancient Mesopotamia might have been the merchants from India. This isn't speculation. This is not evidence showing that Indian merchants were operating in the same region during the same period, dealing in the same materials that Nasir traded. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, flourished from approximately 3300 to 1300 B. Their sophisticated cities included advanced water systems, long-distance trade networks, and extensive contact with Mesopotamia. Archaeological evidence has long suggested trade between these civilizations, but genetic evidence has now confirmed it. Ancient Dina from the Indus Valley shows that Harappan people had genetic ties to Mesopotamia, more remarkably, genetic outliers found in. Broader studies of ancient Eurasian populations show strong similarities to Indus Valley Dina, suggesting these individuals ventured from the Harappan civilization to the Middle East. When we read that Nasir's tablets mention sending gentlemen like ourselves as messengers, we might be reading about a more diverse group than we imagined. Some of those messengers, some of those merchants, some of those intermediaries in the copper trade may have been men whose ancestors came from the Indus Valley, from India, from regions thousands of miles to the east. The genetic evidence reveals a level of international mobility and ethnic diversity in Bronze Age Mesopotamia that would have been impossible to prove through archaeology alone. Consider what this means for understanding Nasir's business. The tablets reveal a sophisticated system of long-distance commerce involving agents and representatives, with Nani mentioning sending gentlemen like ourselves as messengers, indicating a class of professional intermediaries who conducted business on behalf of merchants who couldn't always travel themselves. Multiple tablets reference money deposited with Nasir, suggesting advanced payment systems and credit arrangements that required trust and legal recourse when that trust was violated. But now add the genetic layer. We know that some percentage of Bronze Age Mesopotamian merchants had direct genetic links to South Asia. The copper that Nasir handled might have passed through the hands of merchants, whose genetic ancestors came from India, who maintained trading networks spanning thousands of miles, who spoke different languages, followed different customs, but participated in the same commercial system. When Nani complains about receiving substandard copper, we have to ask, where did that copper actually come from? How many intermediaries handled it between the mine and How many of those intermediaries were ethnic Mesopotamians, and how many were from distant lands identifiable today only? Through their Dina, recent ancient Dina studies have revolutionized our understanding of Bronze Age population movements. A 2022 study published in Science presented the first comprehensive ancient Dina data from pre-pottery Neolithic Mesopotamia. The research revealed that Mesopotamian populations were formed through admixture of pre-Neolithic sources related to Anatolian, Caucasus, and Levantine hunter-gatherers. But the story doesn't end there. The genetic data shows continued migration and mixture throughout the Bronze Age. More recent research from 2025 sequenced whole genomes from Egyptian burial sites dating to 4495 to 4880 years ago. The findings were remarkable. 4/5 of the genome showed links to North Africa and Egypt, but 1/5 showed direct links to Mesopotamia, the land between the Tigris and Euphrates. This confirms what archaeologists have long suspected: the Nile River and the Tigris-Euphrates system weren't just trade routes for goods. They were highways for people, for genes, for populations mixing and moving across vast distances. The complaint tablets demonstrate that ancient Mesopotamia had developed sophisticated commercial law. The Code of Hammurabi, roughly contemporary with Nasir, contains extensive provisions about merchants, agents, debt, and commercial disputes. The tablets show this wasn't just theoretical law, it was practiced reality. But the genetic evidence adds a crucial dimension: these laws had to work across ethnic and cultural boundaries. When someone with Indian subcontinent ancestry conducted business with someone of local Mesopotamian ancestry, both parties needed a legal framework that transcended ethnic Origin. The sophistication of Mesopotamian commercial law wasn't just impressive, it was necessary for managing an ethnically diverse merchant class operating across vast geographic ranges. Notice Nani's emphasis on being treated with contempt and his reference to sending gentlemen like ourselves. This reveals a merchant class acutely conscious of status and dignity. But like ourselves raises an interesting question in light of genetic evidence. Did all merchants consider themselves part of the same class despite potentially different ethnic backgrounds? The concept of a professional merchant identity that transcended ethnicity would have been crucial for international trade. The tablets themselves are evidence of widespread literacy, at least among the merchant class. Multiple people could write cuneiform well enough to compose detailed business correspondence. This required years of training in scribal schools. More importantly, both parties believed that written complaints mattered. This suggests either a formal dispute resolution system where tablets could be presented as evidence, a social understanding that written complaints could damage reputation, or both. But here's what genetic evidence reveals about education and literacy if Bronze Age Mesopotamian merchants included people of South Asian ancestry. Someone had to teach them cuneiform. Scribal schools would have needed to accommodate students from different ethnic backgrounds, possibly speaking different mother tongues, all learning the same writing system to participate in the same commercial culture. The tablets reveal an economy far more sophisticated than simple barter. We see futures contracts, promises to deliver goods at future dates, quality disputes, suggesting standardized expectations, international trade networks with copper from Dilmun, and customers in credit systems with advance payments and deposits, and professional specialization with dedicated copper merchants, messengers, and probably scribes. The genetic evidence shows this sophistication extended to human resources. Mesopotamian commerce wasn't ethnically homogeneous, it was a cosmopolitan system that integrated people from Mesopotamia, the Levant, Anatolia, the Caucasus, and South Asia into a single, functioning economic network. This question of why Nasir kept the complaints gets to the heart of Mesopotamian commercial culture, and genetic evidence provides a new angle. One theory suggests Nasir may have kept complaints as evidence in case of legal disputes, if Nani took him to court. Nasir could present his side of the story. The tablets might be part of a complete business archive documenting transactions, payments, and disputes. But some scholars suggest these might be copies of complaints Nasir himself sent to his suppliers. Here's where genetics becomes relevant if Nasir was a middleman receiving poor quality copper from upstream suppliers, some of whom might have been from Dilmun, Magan, or even further afield, possibly including merchants of South Asian ancestry. He might have been documenting his own complaints about receiving substandard goods. The complexity of supply chains involving multiple ethnic groups, multiple languages, multiple legal traditions would have made documentation essential. Perhaps these tablets weren't just about one bad transaction. They were Nasir's insurance policy in a commercial network, spanning multiple civilizations where genetic evidence now proves that merchants from the Indian subcontinent operated alongside local Mesopotamians. What makes the Nasir tablets so compelling isn't just what they tell us about ancient economics, it's how familiar they feel. Nani's complaint could be posted on a modern review. Site promised quality product, delivered inferior goods, refused refund, treated me with disrespect when I sent representatives, do not recommend. This emotional resonance reveals something profound. Human nature in commercial relationships hasn't fundamentally changed. People in 1750 BC cared about getting what they paid for, being treated with respect, holding vendors accountable, and having their complaints taken seriously. The Tablets demolish any notion of ancient peoples as fundamentally different from us. They, worried about the same things, got annoyed by the same frustrations, and expressed their grievances in remarkably similar ways. But the genetic evidence adds another layer to this. Universality, merchants from Mesopotamia and merchants from the Indian subcontinent. Despite coming from different genetic backgrounds, different homelands, different cultures, participated in the same economic system, followed the same commercial norms, and experienced the same frustrations with bad copper and broken promises. Human economic behavior transcends not just time but also ethnicity, geography, and genetics. The Ea-Nasir archive, small as it is, illuminates several crucial aspects of ancient Mesopotamian society. Ur was a major city with a sophisticated commercial district. Merchants like Ea-Nasir operated in a complex urban economy where reputation, relationships, and documentation all mattered. The copper trade connected Mesopotamia to the Persian Gulf, Oman, possibly the Indus Valley, and Anatolia. This required trust, credit, and systems for resolving disputes across vast distances. But genetic evidence reveals the physical reality behind these trade networks. People actually traveled these routes. Na, extracted from Bronze Age Mesopotamian burials, proves that individuals from South Asia were present. These weren't just goods changing hands at distant ports, these were human beings traveling thousands of miles, conducting business, establishing relationships, sometimes staying, sometimes returning, always maintaining the commercial networks that made civilizations like Ur possible. The very existence of complaint tablets presupposes some system, formal or informal, for addressing grievances. People believed documentation mattered and disputes could be resolved through recognized processes. A substantial merchant class was literate enough to conduct business correspondence in cuneiform, suggesting widespread education and professional training. People could make their entire living as specialized copper merchants, intermediaries, or scribes. The complaints reference money deposited with merchants, goods held in trust, and obligations to deliver specified products. Ur in Ea-Nasir's time was past its peak as an imperial capital, but remained an important commercial center. The city had been sacked by Elamites around 2004 B, ending the Third Dynasty of Ur. By Ea-Nasir's era, circa 1750 B, it was part of the Old Babylonian kingdom, operating under the legal framework Hammurabi was codifying. This was a period of standardization of weights and measures, codification of commercial law, extensive international trade, urban commercial culture, and widespread literacy among professional classes. But it was also, as genetic evidence now reveals, a period of significant human mobility and genetic mixing. Ancient DNA studies of marsh Arabs, the modern population, with the strongest genetic link to ancient Sumerians, show a prevalent autochthonous Middle Eastern component, but also weak Southwest Asian and African contributions, more evident in mtDNA. The genetic history is complex, showing both continuity and mixture. The J1 page 08 branch of Y chromosome lineages shows a local recent expansion. About 4,000 years ago, almost exactly Ea-Nasir's time. This genetic expansion overlaps with what scholars call the city-state period, which characterized southern Mesopotamia. Ea-Nasir lived during a moment of demographic and commercial expansion when cities were growing, trade was intensifying, and populations were mixing in ways we can now trace through Na. Leonard Woolley's excavations of Ur revealed not just the Ea-Nasir tablets, but extensive evidence of commercial activity in the ancient city. The tablets were found in situ in what was clearly a merchant's residence, providing crucial context, unlike texts copied and recopied in later periods. These tablets are primary sources, actual business documents from the period, preserved accidentally when the house was abandoned or destroyed. They're not literary compositions or official inscriptions, but real working documents from daily commercial life. This makes them extraordinarily valuable historical evidence. Most of what we know about ancient societies comes from official texts, king lists, temple records, law, codes, literary works. The Nasir tablets give us something rarer, the voice of ordinary, commercial activity and interpersonal dispute. But when we combine archaeology with genetics, we get an even fuller picture. Archaeology tells us what happened and where. Genetics tells us who was there and where they came from. Together, they reveal that. Ordinary commercial activity in Bronze Age Ur involved people whose genetic ancestors originated thousands of miles away, conducting business in cuneiform, participating in a commercial culture that transcended ethnic boundaries. In recent years, Nasir has achieved unlikely internet fame. His tablets have become memes, Twitter jokes, and subjects of countless articles. Why? Because the complaints are so relatable. Everyone has dealt with a vendor who promised quality and delivered garbage, who took payment and then became unresponsive, who treated legitimate complaints with dismissive arrogance. Nasir, whether he was actually a scammer or just an unlucky middleman caught between demanding customers and unreliable suppliers, has become a symbol of timeless commercial frustration. This viral fame isn't trivial. It demonstrates that ancient history becomes accessible and meaningful when we recognize our shared humanity with people across millennia. The tablets aren't interesting because they're exotic or alien, they're interesting because Nani's frustration is our frustration. But genetics takes this connection even deeper. When we say our frustration, we might be speaking more literally than we realize. Modern populations across Eurasia carry genetic traces of these. Ancient merchants, the people who traded in copper 4,000 years ago, are, in some genetic sense, our ancestors. Their DNA persists in populations from the Middle East to South Asia. Their commercial practices evolved into modern economic systems. Their frustrations with bad copper and broken promises echo in every one-star review we write today. The complaint tablets from Nasir's house in Ur are far more than ancient Yelp reviews. They're primary evidence of a sophisticated international trade network connecting Mesopotamia to distant copper sources, complex credit and payment systems requiring trust, and legal recourse, a literate merchant class capable of detailed business correspondence. Social norms governing commercial relationships and expectations of respect, legal or social. Systems where documented complaints mattered, economic specialization allowing professional merchants to operate, and urban commercial culture with archives and record keeping. Most profoundly, they remind us that ancient peoples weren't fundamentally different from us. They conducted business, got frustrated with poor service, cared about their reputations, and wanted to be treated with respect. 4,000 years later, we still recognize Nani's frustration and can still imagine Nasir's possible defenses. But ancient now reveals an additional truth: these ancient merchants weren't just behaviorally like us. Some of them were literally our genetic ancestors. The genetic evidence from Bronze Age Mesopotamia shows haplogroups that persist in modern Middle Eastern, South Asian, and Mediterranean populations. When Nasir conducted business with merchants whose ancestors came from India, when Nani sent messengers to collect his money, when complaints were written and archived, genes were mixing, populations were moving, and the genetic foundations of modern populations were being laid. That continuity of human experience, preserved in fired clay and cuneiform script and now revealed through DNA, is perhaps the tablet's greatest gift to us. Whether Nasir was history's first scammer or an unfairly maligned middleman, his archive illuminates the complex, sophisticated, and surprisingly familiar world of ancient Mesopotamian commerce, and reminds us that some things like the desire for quality copper, the frustration of broken promises, and the mixing of peoples across vast distances are truly timeless. The complaint tablets of Nasir are housed in the British Museum and remain available for study. They continue to provide insights into old Babylonian commercial practices and the daily life of ancient urban merchants. But now, combined with genetic evidence from Bronze Age burials across Mesopotamia, they tell an even richer story, a story of people from different genetic backgrounds, different homelands, different cultures, coming together in ancient cities like Ur, conducting commerce, writing complaints, mixing genes, and creating the interconnected world we've inherited.